Sometimes the quietest corners of our lives hold the loudest secrets. And what I'm about to take you through, well, it's a tale that unravels slowly, like smoke curling through the cracks of a half forgotten room, revealing truths you weren't quite ready to see. Joe Rogan, he's got that way of leaning in, almost like he's listening not just with his ears, but with his gut. His intuition, Candace Owens, sharp as a tack, eyes like she's already 3 steps ahead of every move, every word. Together they've stumbled onto something that most folks wouldn't dare speak aloud. It all begins with Erica Kirk, widow of Charlie Kirk, a woman who, on the surface, seemed to carry herself with the dignity and poise that most associate with wealth, influence, and tragedy. But Rogan and Owens, they've uncovered layers beneath that surface, layers that make you question the story you thought you knew. There were whispers, little fragments of information that didn't add up. Rogan first noticed it during a casual conversation, a subtle hesitance in the way people spoke about Erica, as if they were carefully weighing each syllable. Candace, being who she is, didn't need to be told twice. She followed the threads, the social media trails, the quiet movements behind closed doors, and soon patterns began to emerge, patterns that didn't align with the narrative that had been told publicly. And here's the thing, sometimes truth doesn't roar. Sometimes it's a quiet insistence, a nudge at the edge of perception. And both Rogan and Owens, they were listening closely. They started with her financial dealings, the kind of transactions that don't make headlines, but tell a story if you know how to read them. Offshore accounts, sudden transfers, acquisitions of properties that didn't quite match the timeline of grief you'd expect. And then there were the people, friends, acquaintances, those who had once been close to Charlie and Erica alike. Some were eager to talk, others not so much. Candace has this uncanny ability to sense when someone is hiding, and when they are, she knows it immediately. She approached them gently, but with precision. One by one, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, and it wasn't just financial, it was behavioral. Small inconsistencies, subtle shifts in how Erica presented herself publicly versus privately. It was the kind of thing most people would overlook, dismissing it as normal coping or perhaps just human complexity. But Rogan, he's got an instinct for nuance, for those flickers of truth in a conversation. He noticed them. She spoke of loyalty, of mourning, of love, but there were moments, tiny, fleeting, where her words contradicted the narrative she seemed intent on constructing. And when those moments stacked up, the story started to fracture. There were documents, emails, messages, each seemingly insignificant on its own, but together they painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. There were late-night meetings, discreet phone calls, and an unusual pattern of influence that spread across networks you wouldn't expect. The deeper Rogan and Owens dug, the more they realized they were stepping into a web spun with meticulous care. Every revelation led to another question, every answer to a shadowed corner of mystery. And that's the tension, because the closer you get, the more dangerous it feels. Not in the Hollywood sense of danger, but in the real human sense, exposing truths that have been carefully hidden, truths that challenge perception, trust, and narrative. Then came the breakthrough, something that neither Rogan nor Owens could have predicted. A set of recordings, subtle, almost casual conversations captured in moments where Erica didn't think anyone was listening. And in those recordings, the facade cracked. intentions, plans, motivations, all whispered in tones that betrayed the image she had presented to the world. Candace, with her keen analytical mind, cross-referenced every detail, every anomaly, and it pointed to a complexity most wouldn't expect. It wasn't a simple story of deceit. It was a tapestry of strategy, emotional manipulation, and careful curation of public perception. Rogan, sitting back, absorbing it all, remarked quietly about the nature of power and influence, about how tragedy can sometimes be weaponized, intentionally or not, to reshape narratives. And it made sense in a way that chilled you and fascinated you at the same time. But there's a subtle humanity in all of it, too. The people caught in the periphery, those who were unwitting participants, those whose trust had been manipulated. Joe and Candace weren't just uncovering a scandal, they were uncovering the human cost, the quiet heartbreak behind polished statements and curated appearances. And then came the moment that would make even the most skeptical lean forward: evidence that tied previously unconnected threads together. A meeting that hadn't been publicized, a document that contradicted every public record, a conversation that illuminated motives that were previously invisible. It was the kind of revelation that makes you stop and reconsider everything you thought you knew about someone. And as they pieced it together, it became clear that the implications weren't just personal, they were societal. They were a reflection on perception, on influence, on how carefully narratives can be constructed and maintained, and how easily we can be led to believe what we see and hear without question. Rogan, leaning back, spoke softly about the responsibility of those who know the truth, of those who uncover hidden layers, and what it means to hold that knowledge. Candace added a perspective that was sharp, unyielding, and piercingly clear: that silence, in the face of manipulation, is complicity. And together they wove the story, not as judges, but as narrators of what was found, of what was revealed, and of what could no longer be ignored. Now, there's a rhythm to uncovering truth like this. It's slow, deliberate, and sometimes painful. Each revelation brings with it a weight, a gravity that you carry long after the conversation ends. And for anyone watching, it's a reminder: the world is rarely as it seems. People, circumstances, and stories are layered with intention, with care, with careful construction, but with persistence, with curiosity, with courage. Even the most guarded truths eventually surface. And what Joe Rogan and Candace Owens revealed about Erica Kirk, about Charlie Kirk's widow, isn't just gossip or speculation. It's a study in perception, in influence, in the way lives are intertwined with narratives larger than ourselves. And in that revelation, there's a lesson about observation, about paying attention, about questioning what's presented and seeking what lies beneath. Because in the quiet corners, in the small anomalies, in the fleeting inconsistencies, the truth waits. And it's in those moments of quiet observation, of careful listening, that the real story emerges. So, as we've walked this path together, seen the pieces fall into place, and felt the weight of discovery, remember that stories like this aren't just about scandal or shock. They're about understanding, about curiosity, about the unyielding pursuit of truth in a world that often prefers comfort over confrontation. And if you've been with me, if you've leaned in, if you've let yourself feel the tension, the suspense, the revelation, I invite you to subscribe, because there are more stories, more truths waiting to be uncovered, and together we'll keep exploring them, one layer at a time.